What's up? What's good? We are back on the channel today with another banger. And today's video, as you can guess from the title, we'll be taking a look at SS for You, the recent collaboration project between Drake and Party Next Door. Drake, coming off that Kendrick beef, decided to drop this collaboration project with Party Next Door, his label mate. And, well, I guess not really label mate, but he technically signed him to his label, but still. I was very excited for it. The album was definitely an album. So without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, let's start things off with the artist ability. I think from an artist ability standpoint, this album was decent to solid. The lyricism was all right, There's definitely some good moments on this album, but honestly, for the most part, it was very weak in terms of the lyricism department. It just didn't hit the same like old Drake does, The rapping was pretty mid in all honesty. And I don't know, it just as someone that really appreciates Drake's older music, it was really infuriating to see him just essentially mail in his verses. This is not the same Drake we've seen in the past. This is not even the same Drake we've seen last year. In the beef, he was actually putting out some good verses during that rap beef with Kendrick. So it's very disappointing to see him just essentially like become complacent again. And I think that's been the biggest issue with Drake. I'm gonna go off on a tangent here, but he's just been so complacent with the fact that he's one of the greatest hit makers of this generation and that he's one of the greatest artists of this generation. And that he's just essentially become complacent with the idea of being able to just put in like half verses every time and just put in like half decent albums and thinking that's all right and that will just allow him to just keep his status as one of the greatest artists like of this generation. But it doesn't. You have to be consistent. You can't just keep resting on your laurels that were accumulated more than 10 years ago. So I think it's just stupid the way he's been handling things recently. And I just feel like because of how like much the rap beef got coverage in society and even social media and like the greater mainstream audience, we reached a point where like Drake hate was like becoming a thing, right? But the truth is, it's not even hate at this point when it's just like truth, It's just facts. Drake's recent albums just have not been good. This album is the exact same thing. It just doesn't hit. And before I even get into the rest of the ratings, it's just me just, I guess, crashing out in a way. It's just disappointing to see someone that used to be such a great artist in the past slowly devolve and have this immense, tremendous fall off that we've seen. Not even from just like an overall standpoint, just even from a lyrical standpoint, He's just nowhere near the same in terms of his pen game as he was even like 5, 6, 7 years ago. So just a crazy fall off. But again, side tangent aside, the lyricism was all right, The flow, again, very mid. Many songs sounded really similar to each other and they kind of blended in, especially in like that first half of the album, which I thought was a very boring first half. The vocals were solid, but again, even then, the vocals just were good at certain points, but also at other points, they felt very repetitive. They felt very monotone, drawn out, and it was just very boring for the most part. I don't know. It's just I expected Drake to get into his R&B mode, drop a really great album with great vocals, great hooks, and just to like flow really well, but that it just isn't what happened. The production, I'll say, was pretty good for the most part. Sometimes, again, you hit the same issue with repetitiveness. But the best thing I think about the album was like the features, The features were really great in all honesty for the most part. Yebba was amazing. Pimmy was amazing. So both of them were great. I can't really say the same about Party Next Door. He just didn't really sound very good on this album. He had some good moments for sure, but for the most part, he was honestly more underwhelming than Drake. So both key collaborators, or I guess both key artists, didn't really do their thing, in all honesty. But so, again, from an artist ability standpoint, it was just all right, Now, onto an album quality standpoint. It was even worse. It was just mid. There's way too many skips on this album. I'd say for me, about like half the album were skips. There were definitely some bangers for sure. I think my favorite songs were probably like Nokia, Give Me a Hug, Die Trying, and even to a certain extent CN Tower. But there were some really awful songs. For example, Meet Your Padres. Like, what was that song? Like, what was that garbage that we had to listen to? Drake trying to sing in Spanish. Um, I don't know if it's supposed to be like a joke song, but like it felt like a joke song. It was bad, awful. Celibacy wasn't good either. Mothballs wasn't good either. There's just a lot of really bad songs in that first half of the album. The second half was still definitely a little bit better. It's just, again, it really just tailed off towards the end as well, even if you're talking about that second half. So I guess like the best part of the album is technically the middle part, from like I guess songs like 7 through like 11 or 12 or 13. But yeah, I don't know, man. This album was just way too bloated. There's way too many songs. That's been a common theme with Drake's recent music, you know? Even going back to Scorpion. Scorpion had way too many songs. Had some great bangers on it for sure, but it felt bloated. CLB, same thing, but definitely to a lesser extent. CLB is definitely one of his best recent albums. Honestly, Nevermind was ass. Nothing beyond that. Her Loss was pretty good too, to a certain extent. It's just the songs sounded very similar to each other at a certain point, so it didn't really have much replay value. For All the Dogs, same thing. It was a good album at certain points, but again, way too many songs. It felt bloated. This album, the exact same thing. So I don't know. I think Drake just needs to settle down and just drop an album that doesn't have like 25 plus songs. And I know this album had 22 songs, but still, 22 was way too many for this album, considering there just wasn't enough to talk about in all those songs. And there wasn't even like a cohesive theme to tie together. So it just felt like way too many songs, in my opinion. I think that's what generally just made this album a lot worse than it could have been. But even at its highest points, there's like maybe like 5 bangers at most. It's just not too many like hits out of this album. But there are definitely some popular songs as well. Like CN Tower was really popular. Give Me a Hug, Nokia. So it's not terrible necessarily. It's not like the worst album I've listened to in terms of album quality. It's just not the greatest either. So I think it fits perfectly into mid. All right, on to the third idea or main point, which is the concept. There was no concept. What do you expect from a new Drake album? The album was essentially like full of all these songs that were either kind of like 3 categories: romantic, toxic, heartbreak songs, whatever they were. But again, there was just no clear cohesive theme that tied them all together. They were just kind of like songs that were just thrown in there. Kind of like a lot of Drake's recent projects. Nothing at all similar to like Nothing Was the Same, Views, which are a lot more conceptual. So again, very disappointing. All right, finally, we'll compare this album to previous Drake albums. Compared to the rest of his discography, this is a pretty bad album. It's not great by any means. I'd say it's probably Drake's second worst album, or I don't know if it's as bad as Honestly Nevermind, but it's probably better than Honestly Nevermind. But again, it's a really bad album. Just very boring in all honesty. Like I'm not enticed to like go back and listen to it. There's nothing I can gain out of this album by listening to it again, other than a couple of good songs here and there. And it's just, again, tying back into what I was talking about earlier. The fall off has just been insane for Drake. He hasn't had a single elite album since Views. Since Views, he's went around and dropped mid after mid after mid until you've gotten a couple of good albums, such as CLB and Her Loss. CLB more so, that was probably a good to great album, but again, it had too many songs. Her Loss was probably a good album, but again, it was hit by the same issue of redundancy and repetitiveness, and a lot of the songs sounding the same, which are essentially 2 issues that we keep seeing through a lot of Drake's recent albums. So, aside from the fact that he's been dropping a lot of mid, you take into account that since Views, he's gotten into 2 high-profile rap beefs. First with Pusha T, where he got embarrassed and essentially his integrity was questioned. Not even questioned, just like fully blown through, with the fact that he was a deadbeat father. And throw in the fact that in Kendrick's, I guess the beef with Kendrick, it didn't go over too well because he kind of just got out-rapped. And also, there's other allegations as well, but those weren't really the bad. I guess they were bad, obviously, right? But it was more so the fact that he got out-rapped on everything, in every phase of the beef, that made it a whole lot worse. Like, it made all those allegations a whole lot worse. So, yeah. So, aside from the fact that, he hasn't been dropping great music, he got into 2 high-profile rap beefs that he both ended up losing. And also throw in the fact that he just decides to do all these things on like social media and stuff, and it just shows you the great downfall of this man that was honestly at the peak of his game in views. He was one of the best rappers out there, one of the greatest hit makers, one of the greatest artists, and since then it's just been a complete horrible fall off. And he's just been complacent with it. He's been like accepting. He's been like, all right, I've gotten worse, but I'll just keep dropping these half-ass albums just because it makes money. And money's what matters at the end of the day, right, Drake? It just gets infuriating for someone that used to enjoy his like older music, and I still do love his older music. It's just how can you go from that to whatever this crap is? Same thing with Kanye. It's essentially showing you how hard it is to maintain a level of greatness in the rap game, and neither Kanye or Drake recently have been good. I mean, Kanye's run was amazing from College Dropout all the way to Donda, but Vultures 1 and 2 just weren't all that good. Vultures 1 was at least decent. You could like make the case that it's an alright album, but Vultures 2 was just trash. Similarly, Drake's just been dropping mid albums at best, other than like CLB and Her Loss, like I said. It's just been a horrible downfall, and I honestly feel like Drake, even before the like beef, should have just taken some time, not dropped any music for a while, and come back a few years later and dropped a classic. That would have been the greatest thing for his career. But no, he keeps dropping music. He keeps dropping these horrible mixtapes, horrible projects that we just don't need to listen to. So, again, I think the best course of action for Drake is to take some time, wait a couple years, try and rediscover that flame and kind of like that hunger that you had back in the past, and just make a banger album. All will not be forgotten, but at least it'll be better than just continue to drop these horrible half-ass albums. And again, Drake's not going to listen to me. Like, he's not going to be watching this video. He's got better things to do. But again, if I could talk to Drake, I'd tell him that, because it's just stupid and just a waste of our time as the fans to listen to whatever this crap is. But yeah, my rant aside, I'd probably give this album at best like a 4 or 5. It's not a good album by any stretch of the word. It's just, there are some bangers, I'll give you that, but other than that, the whole like project, like as a whole, or like a cohesive like album, it's just really bad. So I'd say a 4 or 5. So put something in the middle, so like 4.5. I'll give it a 4.5 out of 10. All right, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Let me know down below what you guys think. Am I being too harsh? Am I being too light? What are your thoughts on the album? There's definitely some great songs off of it. But again, it's just like as a whole, the album was very, very boring, not enjoyable to listen to. And I don't know, man. The Drake fall off is crazy. But again, let me know down below what you guys think. And until next time.